we have a very exciting match, lined up, and I think by popular demand, Wellington is on. So let's see if Lucas can give him a run for his money.
Yeah, Wellington is a former champion here at the SPC as well in the CSW division. Lucas, for people who are a little bit unfamiliar with him, he's a jack of many trades. He is not just a Scrabble player. He is not just a word studier. He is a word crafter, a published author, and if I'm not mistaken, a former MMA fighter. I feel like that was the case. I don't know if he still competes, but he is one of the true Renaissance men in Scrabble.
That's amazing. Wow. And we might have fisticuffs or some martial arts on display if this game gets too close at the end. But what do we see for Lucas with this opening rack? I think he might have his eye on unloading some E's.
Yeah, although I think it might be even more tempting to unload the Y, although as you mentioned, and as he is now lined up on his rack, he can do both. The nice simple I rack leaves a bit of a vowel heavy leave, but I think this is probably by far the best way to declutter his unpleasant vowelitis here and give himself a head start towards his next good rack.
Yeah, and any debate between playing OYE versus EYE? What do we know about the leave quality and the difference there?
So yeah, the duplicate E's, if you're going to duplicate any vowel, E is generally the one you want to do, but you also want to have good consonants to go with it. ADEE versus ADEO. I don't know that either one of them has a dramatic advantage over the other one. You have a bit more flexibility having the different vowels, but A and O in particular don't play super nicely together. So depending on what you draw to fill out your next rack, you could still have some challenges there. And you can see here, Lucas has drawn a bit more vowelitis going on. So he now has to make those determinations again.
Yeah, this is right after a quick play of X-Ray by Wellington. Some people might think about X-Ray and say, hey, isn't that hyphenated? Well, actually, this is referring to X-Ray in the NATO phonetic alphabet. So we learned that Alpha, Bravo, Charlie goes all the way down, and then you get to X, and it's X-Ray. So he scores well with X-Ray with 30 points, puts the turn back over to Lucas, who now needs to figure out how to balance this rack. He's not going to be able to score so much, but he has to kind of do the work of looking at these overlaps and what might be possible. What are you seeing, Rob?
Ooh, for Lucas, I don't know that I'm seeing a whole lot that's lovely. Again, you really want to shed vowels here when you've got 5 of them. And you also don't want to necessarily do so in a way that leaves you prone to more vowel troubles the next turn. So like a play like that uses both of your vowel or consonants, like Odeon, for example, in a location on the board, that still leaves you with AE, which is a little bit tougher to come back from than even ADE, ODE, ONE, ANE, etc. So you get into the kind of calculus here where you're looking at your leave, you're assessing how valuable it is, what it sets you up for, and how much you can score with it next turn against how many points can you get this turn. And if you can score a few extra points but leave those vowels, is the trade-off worth it? And this is one of those determinations that everybody has to kind of learn to make in tournament Scrabble.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is interesting. He chooses to play EXO. There's also the option to play OXO. He seems to be favoring the idea of, keeping an O versus having the duplicate E's. But also very interesting, of course, is that he set up a hook of the end that he holds for Exon. So that was a very interesting way to unload a couple vowels, bring the rack to reasonable balance, and also set up a spot. So I think that's a pretty crafty play by Lucas, although he's not been rewarded by a good draw.
Yeah, the other advantage here, or the other kind of thought process that has to enter Wellington's head here, a play like this, does this mean that Lucas is trying to set up a J or a Z? It's the type of play that, if Nigel plays that against you, you automatically assume that he has some 60-point play that he's planning and you must block. In this case, it looks like Wellington is not either doesn't think that that's likely or is willing to take the risk that it comes down, choosing instead to play Geyer and Gary. Goodness, should learn to talk here.
Yeah, so it's a quick play from Wellington, but also a fairly accurate play. He's balanced his rack. He's not worried too much about the O that was under the triple letter score. So if he dismissed the risk of that J or Z set that you implied that could be in consideration. He's done so in this case correctly because Lucas wasn't really doing that. And now he's got to figure out how to get another third turn in a row of trying to balance his rack that's too many vowels.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where, like, how you maintain your composure, how you maintain your equanimity. You're making good plays, the best ones that are available to you. You're trying to get some balance on your rack, and the bag just won't cooperate. If I'm being honest, this is one of the things that I myself as a player struggle with, is not falling prey to that frustration aspect and not starting to impulsively play or just get so mad that you impulsively exchange. And it looks like Lucas has that kind of determination here. He's patient, he's considering his plays, and I think that's really impressive.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things that has happened now out of having struggled with vowels, even though he's balanced his rack, is that he's fallen a little behind because he didn't have the power to score as many points as his opponent who had some consonants. And now he's choosing to play Odia. The one thing is that Wellington, meanwhile, was finally able to not just get some points, but also draw into a bingo. So hopefully for Lucas, he can get a better draw now so that he doesn't fall into too big of a hole.
Yeah, it's at some point you think to yourself, there can't be any more for me to draw, and then the bag just laughs in your face as it has once more just spit more vowels onto Lucas's rack. One thing I do want to mention about Wellington's last play with Geyer and Gary is that one thing that I have always really enjoyed in watching Wellington's games is just how effortlessly and instinctively he plays a defensive game. Like, that play itself just made it, except for the EE hook here, which Wellington is now taking advantage of, it's already 2 turns into the game. It's so hard to access more than 25% of the board. And he plays it so effortlessly. It's one of the things that when I've had the opportunity to play him, I can't say that I enjoy it as much as I enjoy watching it, but it's something that's forcing me as a player to evolve, just to learn how to ensure that I adjust my play to be able to have opportunities to fight back. Because now you see Wellington has drawn into the game's first bingo. He's played spirals, and suddenly, where do you play S's on this board? Exo doesn't take an S, Odia doesn't take an S. It's already becoming more and more challenging for Lucas to find the geometry of a board that lets him fight back.
Yeah, things are quickly slipping, and it goes to show that when you're in a vowel-heavy situation and you try to be patient and unload the vowels and unload the vowels, if it happens 3-4 turns in a row and your opponent is able to extend the lead, it can be big trouble. Lucas is going to end up playing 3 or 4 tiles down here to try to balance his rack again, but he really needs to get some good stuff after that in order to kind of stay within a range to catch up. Of course, anything can happen in Scrabble, and there's lots of tiles remaining in the bag, so it's still very early. And we haven't seen any blanks, which in a weird way might be a good thing for Lucas, meaning that at least his opponent's bingoed but has not taken away one of the available blanks. So there is room to catch up, but it's going to be hard, especially with Wellington drawing a Q and a U and an S, and having some scoring potential right now.
Yeah, and it's tough too, because even though it's frustrating to keep drawing those vowels over and over and over again the way that Lucas has been drawing, what you do also need to be aware of, which can really make a challenging game for you, is that despite the fact that you're drawing all those vowels, the bag is becoming more and more consonant heavy. So if you reach a point where you leave a really favorable 2 consonant 1 vowel leave, suddenly you might draw 4 consonants out of the bag, and now you're in even worse shape.
Yeah. He's gotten consonants. He's got back to balance in terms of consonant vowel ratio. So that's the one positive. But the 2 consonants, 2 of the consonants that he has, the B and the V that came in the draw, don't combine in great ways. There are words, but he's going to be in a position at least now to score some more points than he did in many of the previous turns. So what do you think he's going to do here?
Oh, yeah, I'm thinking to myself, because I'm also I'm feeling a little bit frustrated on his behalf, because Wellington has just continued to keep the scoring pressure on, playing the Q for 48 points on that last turn. And again, his last play of Neem, which gave him some points, unfortunately didn't really do a whole lot to really make the board much easier to play. You can fit an I on Jan, you can fit a T, but you can't do an S. Now, of course, with Wellington's play, there is an S hook available that Lucas can hope to draw. But I mean, it feels like you're treading water, and the level of the waves, they're just getting higher up. This type of scoring pressure, kind of now being down 100 points almost, you start to have that impulse of, well, I can't try for a good rack anymore. I can't be patient. I'm too far behind now. And so suddenly you feel obligated to take bigger risks, bigger swings for good draws. And ultimately that can often play into your opponent's hands.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult for Lucas, already being down close to 100 points, needing to, again, get his rack balanced, unload some. Now he has to unload these consonants and try to score a little bit with them, but it's not necessarily obvious. One of the options, a couple of the good options for Lucas do involve plays that score a few points but also open up the board. So that's another factor. So one of the options is Bovate, with forming BO. I would throw an E right into the triple lane, which of course is always scary to do. But if he does that, he might actually find that helpful for him downstream, because Wellington is, unbeknownst to him, holding all these E's, so probably wouldn't end up using that spot. And similarly, another candidate play is to play above, forming AI, which puts an E in the bottom triple lane. So I wonder if Lucas will play either of these 2 options, because it would certainly create some volatility that might work in his favor.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like you said, it's so scary to open up triple lanes, especially with a nice letter like an E. And ordinarily, and maybe even most probably, a situation like that where you play above or you play Bovate, you can see that, like you said, Wellington has drawn a blank, but in this instance, he doesn't have the best letters to go with it to work with a floating E. That said, so often at this point, Wellington will have already groomed his rack, and you're always worried that he's farther ahead, rack building wise than you are. So it's such a hard just choice to make, the train of thought is that, like, Wellington is probably closer to a bingo. Do I want to give him a bingo opportunity? What do I do here? And it looks like Lucas is settling for creating lines that are not quite as dangerous, scoring some points, and leaving a reasonable bingo leave to really hopefully finally hit on his draw here.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting play. Not one that I would have expected, but playing the end off is an option. But he does keep a nice leave, and hopefully he'll get something to go along with it. Meanwhile, Wellington has found a fantastic play, which is, it's straightforward to look in that lane or the QU, but it's often a word that can be easily missed because it's a little unusual. What do you think of that, Rob?
That's great. I mean, Wellington, and I was singing his praises for playing defense, like such inherently like instinctive defense earlier in this game, but like he set himself up. Now he has a blank in hand, a 42-point play, setting up a Z, and you like after a play like BON, Lucas could have just about anything. He could have four good bingo tiles, or he could have, some complications. Like in this case, he had the V to make it a little bit more difficult for him to draw into a bingo now. But like Wellington he's kind of shaped the board and shaped the sequence of the game through his choices to where he can now choose when to be aggressive and potentially set himself up for something really, really high scoring.
Yeah, and even though Lucas once again kept a good leave, he didn't draw letters that would help him bingo. He did draw the Z, which is a great scoring tile. Now, one thing that might play out here is if he plays the Z overlapping the O in Bon, which seems likely, he'll score some points. But depending on which word he chooses, it may open a spot for Wellington to play the beautiful word Feijoas. And that might just seal the deal in this game.
Yeah, it's tough because, again, you're looking at a 116-point deficit here. That's 2 bingos if your opponent doesn't score on their next turn, and you know that they're almost certainly going to. And like it's so hard on this board, with the exception of that S right at 15H, that most of the lines that are available to Lucas give something back that Wellington can potentially keep scoring. So you could conceivably be looking at needing 3 bingos, or in this case, looks like he's looking and contemplating Zeta in that spot you mentioned. A 50-point Z play is basically a bingo for his purposes. It's just, can he, through the vagaries of chance, select a play that does not ultimately benefit Wellington on this turn?
Yeah, and it's going to be difficult because if he considers Zeta in that spot, that will create a spot. If he plays toes, it does the same thing, different hook. But he's going to choose Zeta and Zo, which seems quite reasonable. A lot of players would play that. But for him in this scenario, he's going to get hit. And he's not going to get hit in the way that he might have expected to. Might have expected the Ness is going to come down. It's going to come and hit Zetas. But instead, he's coming across this way for a big score. And this will put this game essentially out of reach already, which is a little bit sad.
Yeah, we got a bit spoiled with our 2 first really close games, and this game is definitely not taking a similar track to this point. There is still volatility on the board after Feijoas. There are bingo lines above the F and the E. There's the S hook on Zeta, playing through the A, the S, and the E in Equez. But it's really, really tough. Like at this point, when you're so far behind, it's really hard to keep thinking in terms of how do I get back to a win instead of how do I get within shouting distance even. Um, yeah, it's one of the most challenging things about Scrabble, even at the highest levels of play. You know, the timing factor and the luck factor are going to put you in situations where you have to go through games like this. And it's one of the hidden skills of Scrabble to be able to navigate these and not get out of, bent out of shape and, lose interest in the current game or to let it carry over into your future games. Like having the recognition that, a really, really bad game is going to happen to just about anybody. And how you react to it is a really, really important skill.
Yeah, and on that note, Lucas is showing a lot of poise and finding his best play despite, what you just said, of this game not going his way, despite really no fault of his own. Nothing that he did was, really offbeat play or anything that wasn't, strong option. And yet, he fell quite far behind, really just watching his opponent play the game. But he's done well to play vocab and still demonstrate that he's seeing well on the board.
Yeah, I mean he's limited in his options by what he's drawing out of the bag, but he is doing the best that is available to him. I can't really say that he's making mistakes, and Scrabble is just a really, really hard game sometimes.
Yeah. Wellington drawing into a lot of consonants. Needed to unload some, and so naturally at this point in the game, he just takes out one of the more potent locations on the board with Venue, really mucking up a number of lanes and making it basically cut and dry that will be really impossible for miracle comebacks to happen. But that being said, there's still lots of game to play, and there's still some good plays to find. So not to worry. There's it may not be likely for a total comeback to happen, but it doesn't mean that we won't see some great options being put down. So I'm interested to see how Lucas deals with it from here. He's looking to balance his rack again with playing Tut. I think he might be looking at it and just overlapping with Gary.
Yeah, or you could play it hooking the T onto Yont. It doesn't really do anything constructive for the board. Tut alongside Gary again, like the extra kind of salt in the wound here from Lucas's perspective with Wellington's last play of Venue is not only did it block, his best opportunity to score if he draws into a bingo, that V makes it really hard to reopen that area of the board. So even if he plays something like Tut alongside, the TI is a really defensive two-letter word that, again, just complicates his ability to open up space on the board to attempt, like you said, maybe not the ability to win the game, but to make sure that when he draws something, he can play it.
Yes, there is a interesting uncommon word that he can play now, Tautit, which would overlap with forming if and te on fehoas. It's a Scots word, which means matted or tangled. I would like to say I knew this word, but I was never taught it.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
There are some very, very interesting kind of dead sixes, standalone sixes that have made it into the CSW lexicon by means of the Scots. Another one, I don't remember when I was observing a game, but another one like it is Doitit, Doitit, that was relevant in a game I was recently watching on a stream. And it's one of those weird things where, like, it's hard to study sixes. A lot of players either haven't done a lot of in-depth study of them, because they don't seem, as useful. You don't get your 50-point bonus for bingoing. You don't get as many overlaps. You don't get to maximize the tile placement for scoring quite as easily. But there are some really, really interesting and useful words in there for situations like this.
Absolutely. The lexicon has a lot of words, a lot of vocab, or as I like to tell folks at Scrabble Club, it's not your vocabulary, it's your vocabulary, because there's so many words that, only come up in Scrabble situations. And if you try to show them off in your regular day-to-day life, people might not understand you. But they are words. They get entered from source dictionaries, and really fantastic display of knowledge to if you know some of these words. And we definitely see a few words on this board that are showcasing the players' abilities. So really good stuff there. But for Lucas, he had to just try to do his best to keep his rack somewhat balanced, and also take a few points. So he played Twee, and Wellington quickly responds with Hundo, the top left. So this game is quickly progressing, but it doesn't seem that Lucas is catching any breaks with his draws.
And again, Wellington is just so effortlessly restricting space available to Lucas to get a bingo down. And in this case with Hundo, he's setting up the D on his rack to score with again, DOF. There's the potential. I mean, as it turns out, Lucas also had a D, but he doesn't want to score 20 points with that D. He wants to bingo. So it just, I keep singing his praises, but the way that Wellington makes advanced strategy feel so effortless is just, it's kind of remarkable to watch. And I really, really love having the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, it seems like Wellington's default setting is to play well. It's like he doesn't, for some of the plays that other players will need to really spend a lot of time thinking in order to just come up with a strategy and the defensive move, and while also scoring the right amount of points. Wellington, in most cases, will do that without it looking like he's requiring so much effort. And that's really what makes Wellington so consistently a top finisher in every big tournament. Meanwhile, Lucas doing his best to show what he's capable of, and these tiles were not really the racks that would allow him to do very much, but he's staying really positive and focused, and good credit to him for that. Wellington is sitting there with the second blank as well, so very likely to work his way toward another bingo that should leave him with a very big finishing score.
Yeah, this is again, and it's especially challenging on stream where people are watching you play, and either rooting for you, maybe rooting against you if you're against a friend of theirs, or just really looking forward to some exciting plays. Sometimes they're just not going to be there. You won't have the opportunities available based on what you draw, and not letting yourself think of it in terms of like an assessment or a judgment on your playing ability as a player. It's tough, at least certainly for me. I don't want to, put any kind of words or assumptions into, how Lucas thinks about and approaches the game. But personally speaking, it is such a hard skill that I'm still struggling to master. It's just that what happens in one game is not the, end all be all of who you are as a Scrabble player.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And Lucas has tried to make the best of very difficult racks, but so he's taken the time, looked through a lot of options, but it really just came down to what he was drawing, that he couldn't get any rhythm going. But that being said, still every game is unique, and that's part of what makes this game so fun. Wellington now looking at his rack and seeing diarchy doesn't quite. Oh, does it fit? No, it does fit.
Oh yeah, starting with the D, that Doff, he planned this, the 5-dimension chess 2 turns ago.
Will he pull the trigger on that? I imagine so, but he's still taking a look at his options. There is, of course, another lane after Endow to look through.
And there was a comment in the chat talking about just how fast Wellington plays, and he plays so accurately, so quickly. So he has the luxury here. He can go through the racks and make sure he's not missing something that plays for more points alongside of Endow. And it's still it's mind-boggling to me that he is so accurate so quickly. Like, he's on a comparable level, I would say, as far as playing accurately, with speed, with pace, to, he approaches a Nigel. He, certainly with time control in his games, he has such an advantage once he gets that big time cushion midway through the game, that in and of itself, gains him spread. Might not necessarily come up in the case of like someone losing a game because they run out of time, but when you're rushing to get through racks in a game, like you can generate quite a bit of spread advantage by having your opponent under time pressure.
Yep, and once again, he, just as you said, quick and accurate. He's chosen diarchy. He did notice Dharmic on his rack and was just doing the little work to just compare, how that would shape up in terms of responses in the pool and so on. But still, diarchy was certainly cut above by being 6 more points, and now he's committed that play. So great on him, and he's got so much time on his rack, time on his clock, and he definitely, as you said, is always playing accurately and quickly. I play quickly, but I just don't see words enough to bother spending more time to consider it. So really a lot of credit to Wellington for being able to find those options and then decide between them, and do it so often, is the best play. So, for Lucas, he's been just trying to pick up a few points, prevent the spread from being too damaging. It's just one game. He's played well, so this is still very early in this tournament. So he'll bounce back from this, and it's definitely when you play one of the top players and the world champion, certainly one of the solaces you can kind of take as well. I might have had a rough run with this game, even if I had good tiles, right? So sometimes you talk yourself into that so that you can just simply consider it a write-off, and you rather get good tiles against some of the other players where you may have even better odds of winning. So just depends on your mindset, how you approach, these games where, you're otherwise struggling with lousy combinations that are coming to you straight out of the bag. So not to say that this hasn't been a good game in the other dimensions of just look at the great words that have been put down. A lot of words that a mid-level player even will say, oh, I didn't know these words. I've great things to learn from this game. Equus and diarchy and fehoas and hundo, geta, X-ray and yoni. These are not everyday words that everybody knows, so really beneficial to expand your vocab, which is also on the board.
Yeah, I do kind of want to step back just a bit to something that you mentioned I found really interesting, Shan, about how, like you said, playing a world champion, playing such a skilled player in the example of Wellington here, where, like you said, it's going to be a difficult game to win because he is so skilled. And that stands for just about anybody, no matter your skill level. So I find it interesting to think of it in terms of like, if I was going to get stomped and lose a bunch of spread against Wellington, let it be a draw like this. Whereas, if I draw this poorly against another player, I might lose a game that I could steal otherwise or have a better chance in. It's a perspective shift that I haven't really considered very much myself, and I think there's some value to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the thing is that when you know that, okay, I'm on the stream here, I'm losing this game by 200 plus points, it's a little ugly, but at the same time, that's another way of saying, hey, you know what? I lost this game, but it was totally not anything that I did. So how upset can I be about it, right? So you can kind of let that roll off your back because you know that it was just the tiles and not a scenario where, oh, look, this amazing player has just totally outplayed me at every turn and beaten me, crushed me that way. So mindset is really important in Scrabble games, especially when you're not getting the tiles and you need to kind of stay alert. Things do turn around. But you often, if players get frustrated and they carry that from one game to another, that's when it gets to be that the whole tournament gets affected. So definitely not a bad game from the standpoint of how he played. The result, definitely not what he wants. But 273 Kelvin is not absolute zero. So I'd say it's a pretty solid